I thought missing that train meant losing my future. But it was the moment my entire life began to change.
The crowded platform buzzed with impatience as the silver train screeched into the station, its doors sliding open with a hiss. Aaliyah Johnson stood near the yellow line, clutching her worn leather tote and glancing nervously at her watch. She had exactly 15 minutes to get across town for a job interview that could change her life. Her heart raced. After years of rejection and temporary gigs, this opportunity felt like her one real shot. She had prepared all night, rehearsing answers in her small studio apartment and ironing the only blazer she owned. Everything depended on this morning. The announcer's voice echoed, "Doors closing in 30 seconds." Just as Aaliyah took a step forward, ready to board, she noticed an elderly man struggling with his cane near the staircase. His bag had slipped to the floor, papers spilling across the ground as hurried commuters brushed past him without a glance. Aaliyah froze. Her mind screamed, "If you help him, you'll miss the train. You'll miss your chance." But her heart whispered something else. Without hesitation, she dropped to her knees, gathering the scattered papers, gently placing them back in the man's worn satchel. She steadied him by the arm as he tried to stand, his voice trembling. "Thank you, child." Nobody stopped. Not one soul. The train doors slammed shut behind her. The car rolled forward. Her chance seemed to vanish in that metallic roar. For a moment, regret stabbed her chest. Tears welled in her eyes as she watched the train disappear into the tunnel. She had traded her dream for a stranger's need, but Aaliyah didn't know that this small act of kindness, this single decision made in a heartbeat, would set her on a path far greater than she had ever imagined. The old man adjusted his glasses and looked at her with an odd intensity. "You missed your train because of me, didn't you?" Aaliyah tried to smile, though disappointment hung heavy on her face. "It's okay. Some things matter more." He gave a slow nod, almost as if he knew something she didn't. "You'll understand one day." She couldn't shake the strange weight of his words. As she helped him to a bench, she noticed people watching, some with guilt for not helping, others with curiosity about why she chose compassion over ambition. In that moment, Aaliyah became a quiet contrast to the busy world around her. While others rushed, she paused. While others ignored, she cared. And that difference would change everything. But right now, Aaliyah didn't feel like a hero. She felt defeated. Her dream job interview was slipping away, and with it, the stability she had fought so hard to find. She closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer that somehow this sacrifice would not be in vain. Sometimes in life, we are faced with choices that test our character. Do we chase after success at all costs? Or do we stop to lift someone else, even if it means delaying our own journey? Aaliyah chose kindness, and her decision sparked a chain of events that would transform her life in ways she never expected. Before we dive deeper into her journey, I want to ask you this. Have you ever faced a moment where helping someone meant risking your own opportunity? If this story already has you reflecting, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring stories that touch the heart and remind us of the power of compassion. Because what happened next will leave you speechless. The next morning, Aaliyah finally managed to reschedule her interview, though it was only by chance that the company agreed to see her again. She arrived at the tall glass building downtown, feeling small against its shining walls. Inside, polished marble floors reflected a world of power and prestige that felt far away from her reality. As she waited in the lobby, she noticed a young woman striding confidently across the floor. Designer heels clicked like a metronome, and her blazer was crisp enough to belong on a runway. She held her tablet like a badge of authority. Her name was Madison Clark, the company's recruitment director. From the moment Madison's eyes landed on Aaliyah's modest outfit and scuffed shoes, her lips curled into a faint smirk. She didn't need words to show what she thought. Her gaze said it all. "You don't belong here." "Name?" Madison asked, her voice clipped. "Aaliyah Johnson," she replied softly, handing over her resume. Madison scanned the paper, her expression tightening with thinly veiled disdain. "Community college? Temp work, retail assistant?" She raised an eyebrow. "And you're applying for a position in our executive development program?" Aaliyah nodded, trying to stay calm. "Yes, ma'am. I believe I can contribute a lot. I've worked hard to... Madison cut her off with a laugh that echoed through the pristine lobby. Hard work is admirable, but this program is for people who stand out. People with connections, top degrees, pedigree. She lingered on the last word as if it were a crown jewel. Her tone carried no anger, just pure condescension, which somehow stung more. Madison was the kind of person who didn't scream to belittle others. She did it with elegance, with a smile, and with the certainty that the world was made for her, and people like her. Aaliyah felt her cheeks heat up, but she held her head high. Still, Madison's voice lowered, sharp like a whisper meant to cut. Frankly, you're wasting your time, and mine. The other applicants, dressed in tailored suits, glanced over. Some chuckled quietly. Aaliyah wanted to sink into the floor, but Madison wasn't done. She leaned closer, her perfume sharp and overwhelming. People like you don't make it here. Ambition is one thing, but let's be realistic. This program is about excellence. You'd be better off finding something simpler. Her words weren't just insulting. They were final, like a judge slamming down a gavel. Aaliyah clenched her throat tighter, every syllable cutting into her determination. For Madison, it wasn't enough to doubt Aaliyah. She wanted her to feel small. She thrived on the belief that she could decide who deserved success and who didn't. The worst part. Madison truly believed she was right. As Madison walked away to greet another applicant, Aaliyah's heart sank. The humiliation burned inside her, louder than the lobby chatter. Echoed in her mind. People like you don't make it here. But as much as they hurt, they also stirred something else. A quiet fire that had lived in her since childhood. She remembered growing up in a small neighborhood on the south side of the city. Money was always scarce and opportunities even scarcer. Her mother worked double shifts as a nurse's aide, and her father, when he was around, fixed cars in a garage barely holding together. Aaliyah was the oldest of three, and from a young age she learned that if she didn't fight for a way forward, nobody would hand it to her. Her first lesson in resilience came at 10 years old, when her school announced a spelling competition. She had never competed in anything before. She didn't even own a proper dictionary. But every night after finishing her homework and helping her siblings with theirs, she copied words from old newspapers her mother brought home. She whispered them under her breath while washing dishes, while folding laundry, while lying awake in bed. On competition day, her classmates laughed at her thrift store dress and worn shoes. But when the judge called out the final word, perseverance, she spelled it slowly, carefully, and perfectly. That word became her mantra. Perseverance. It was what carried her through community college, where she balanced 2 part-time jobs while tutoring classmates for extra cash. It was what pushed her to apply for internships, even when rejection emails filled her inbox more often than hope. And it was what gave her the courage to apply for the executive program now, despite the odds stacked against her. What Madison didn't know was that behind Aaliyah's humble resume lived a person who had mastered survival, who had sharpened her mind and skills in silence while others dismissed her. She had taught herself public speaking by joining a small community center debate club where she learned to think on her feet. She had studied business strategies from free online courses late at night after work, scribbling notes until her eyelids drooped. She had even learned coding basics to help a local nonprofit redesign their website, earning praise from people who couldn't afford professional help. But the most important thing Aaliyah had was not on paper. It was her empathy. Her decision on that train platform wasn't an accident. Aaliyah had a heart that instinctively chose people over convenience, kindness over calculation. And though it cost her that morning, life had a strange way of rewarding choices like that. The old man she had helped, Mr. Thompson, wasn't far from her mind either. She couldn't explain it, but something about his words, "You'll understand one day," kept replaying in her thoughts. It felt like a clue to a puzzle she hadn't yet discovered. Now, sitting in that lobby, waiting for her name to be called, she straightened her blazer and took a deep breath. She didn't look like the other candidates, and she didn't have their polished resumes. But she had something that couldn't be measured by lines on a page. She had lived experience, grit, and the unshakable ability to adapt. That was her hidden strength. Still, foreshadowing doesn't come with fanfare. On the surface, nothing about Aaliyah screamed extraordinary. She was just another applicant, quietly waiting, clutching a tote bag that had seen better days, and yet, when she finally walked into that interview room, there would be a shift. Subtle at first, then undeniable, because perseverance wasn't just a word she once spelled on stage. It was the rhythm of her life, the pulse that had guided every decision she made. And soon, it would become the very thing that silenced the laughter, erased the doubt, and rewrote the ending Madison thought she already knew. But for now, Aaliyah sat quietly, unaware. The interview room felt colder than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, a reminder of how small one could feel in a world built on glass towers and corner offices. At the long mahogany table sat 3 executives. Their suits were sharp, their expressions unreadable. Madison stood near the corner, tablet in hand, her smile polite but edged with that same superiority she had shown earlier. Aaliyah stepped inside. Clutching her tote, her heart pounding like a drum. "Ms. Johnson," one of the executives said, adjusting his glasses. "We'll keep this brief. Please take a seat." She sat carefully. Smoothing her blazer, the questions began. "Quick and sharp? Tell us about a challenge you faced and how you overcame it." Aaliyah swallowed, thinking of dozens of stories from her life. The bills she stretched with 3 part-time jobs, the nights she studied until dawn. But she chose one simple memory. "In college, I had to take on multiple jobs to support my family. There were nights I would finish a shift at midnight, study until 2, then wake up at 6 to do it all again. I didn't just learn time management. I learned sacrifice, how to prioritize what mattered most, even when it hurt." The executives exchanged glances. Another leaned forward. "What makes you think you belong in this program, competing with candidates from Ivy League schools?" The jab stung, but Aaliyah didn't flinch. She clasped her hands together, steady. "Because I've lived in the very communities your company wants to serve. I know what it means to stretch a dollar, to find creative solutions when resources are limited, to connect with people who feel unseen. I may not have Ivy League, but I have resilience. And resilience is not taught, it's lived." A silence hung in the air. Even Madison's smirk faltered slightly. The executives pressed on. "What would you do if given a leadership role in a high-pressure situation?" Aaliyah leaned forward, her eyes bright now, voice gaining strength. "I'd listen first. Because leadership isn't about commanding, it's about understanding. People follow those who see them, who value them. If you ignore the human element, you can't build anything that lasts." Her words surprised even herself. She hadn't rehearsed them. They flowed from a place deeper than memory, from truth. The executives scribbled notes. One of them, a woman with silver streaks in her hair, tilted her head as if intrigued. But then came the question Madison had clearly planted. "Ms. Johnson," one of the men said, "why should we trust you? When your resume shows inconsistency, short jobs, frequent changes, doesn't that suggest a lack of commitment?" Aaliyah's chest tightened, but then she exhaled slowly. She had a choice, shrink or stand tall, so she lifted her chin. Those short jobs, they weren't failures. They were survival. Each one taught me something new. Customer service, communication, conflict resolution, even technical skills I never thought I'd need. I wasn't inconsistent. I was building versatility. And I can bring that adaptability here, to this company, in ways someone who's only known stability might not. Her voice carried no anger, only conviction. For the first time, Madison shifted uncomfortably. The executives leaned back, studying her with new eyes. Then came the final test. Imagine we place you on the spot, sudden crisis. Investors are pulling back, and you must present a solution in front of the board immediately. What do? The room grew heavy. Aaliyah could almost hear her own heartbeat. She remembered nights spent at the community center debate club, the pressure of standing in front of strangers with no script, and the way she had learned to think fast, trust her instincts, and let her passion carry her voice. So she stood. "Let me show you," she said. The executives raised their brows but allowed it. Madison folded her arms, certain Aaliyah would falter. Aaliyah took a deep breath and began as though addressing a real boardroom. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're concerned. The numbers don't look good, but numbers alone don't tell the whole story. Behind every dollar is a human being. Behind every chart is potential waiting to be unlocked. If we shift focus from cutting losses to creating value, by investing in overlooked communities, by building loyalty where competitors see no worth, we won't just survive this crisis. We'll build a foundation that cannot be shaken. Because when people trust you, they stand with you, even when the market doesn't. Her voice rose, confident now, filling the room. We don't fix problems by shrinking back. We fix them by expanding vision. And if given the chance, that's the kind of leadership I would bring. The room was silent when she finished. Even the city noise outside seemed to pause. One executive's pen slipped from his hand. The silver-haired woman gave the faintest smile. And Madison, the woman who had dismissed her before even hearing her out, stood frozen, unable to hide the flicker of shock in her eyes. Aaliyah sat back down, her pulse racing but her spirit steady. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just answering questions. She was proving herself, not with a resume, not with a degree, but with the undeniable strength of her voice, her vision and her truth. What she didn't know yet was that this performance was only the beginning, because the greatest surprise and the twist that would rewrite everything was still waiting. Just around the corner, of just how powerful her story was about to become. The interview wrapped up with polite nods, the executives thanking Aaliyah for her time. She stood clutching her tote once again, unsure whether she had impressed them or simply embarrassed herself. As she walked toward the door, Madison's voice trailed after her, calm but laced with sarcasm. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We'll be in touch. Though I wouldn't hold my breath. The words stung, but Aaliyah forced a small smile, refusing to let Madison have the satisfaction of breaking her spirit. She stepped out into the hallway, exhaling a long breath of relief and exhaustion. Just then, a deep, familiar voice echoed down the corridor. Aaliyah Johnson? She turned sharply. At the far end of the hallway stood the elderly man she had helped on the train platform, Mr. Thompson. Except this time, he didn't look like the frail old commuter she remembered. His suit was tailored, his shoes polished, and his posture carried the confidence of someone very much at home in this glass tower. Her eyes widened. Mr. Thompson? He smiled warmly. I thought I recognized you when I saw the candidate list. I wanted to see for myself if the woman who gave up her train would bring that same heart into this building. Aaliyah blinked, stunned. You work here? Madison's heels clicked quickly down the hall as she rushed forward. Mr. Thompson, I wasn't aware you were observing today. The executives appeared behind her, suddenly more attentive, their previous stoicism shifting into respect. Because this wasn't just an employee, Mr. Thompson was Harold Thompson, founder and current board chair of the entire company, a man whose signature carried more weight than 1,000 resumes. Aaliyah's breath caught. He adjusted his glasses, eyes soft but sharp. Ms. Johnson, what you did that morning on the platform said more about your character than any interview ever could. Most people rushed past me. You stopped. You sacrificed something important for someone you didn't know. Madison's face paled, her confident smirk evaporating. And today, Mr. Thompson continued, you walked into this room and showed the same qualities. Resilience, empathy, vision. Qualities I fear we've overlooked far too often by chasing shiny resumes instead of true leadership potential. The executives nodded silently, some shifting uncomfortably under the weight of his words. Aaliyah struggled to find her voice. I was just trying to do the right thing. And that, Mr. Thompson said firmly, is exactly why you belong here. The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Madison, who had mocked her background and belittled her efforts, now stood powerless as her arrogance was laid bare in front of everyone. Mr. Thompson turned his gaze toward her, his tone sharpening. Madison, you dismissed this young woman before she even spoke. That is not how we measure potential in this company, or at least it shouldn't be. The room grew heavier with silence. Madison swallowed hard but said nothing. Aaliyah felt her knees weaken. The very act that had cost her the train, that she thought had ruined her chance, was now the reason she stood at the edge of an opportunity bigger than anything she had imagined. Her kindness had not just been noticed. It had been remembered, and now it was changing everything. Madison's perfect composure cracked like glass under a hammer. For years, she had built her reputation on confidence, polish, and the belief that she could spot talent with a single glance. But now, in front of the very executives whose approval she craved, her judgment was being questioned. Mr. Thompson's words lingered. "You dismiss this young woman before she even spoke." The executive's eyes shifted toward Madison, no longer admiring but scrutinizing. The silver-haired woman tapped her pen against the table. "Madison, how many candidates have you overlooked simply because they didn't fit your definition of excellence?" Madison opened her mouth, then closed it, her confidence slipping through her fingers like sand. I was only maintaining standards," she stammered. "Standards?" Mr. Thompson's voice cut like thunder. "Or prejudice wrapped in professionalism?" The silence that followed was heavier than any reprimand. For the first time, Madison couldn't hide behind her polished image. The very smile she had used as a weapon now faltered, exposing insecurity beneath. One of the executives finally spoke. "Perhaps it's time we reevaluate our recruitment practices. We may have missed more than one Aaliyah Johnson." The words landed like a verdict. Madison lowered her eyes, her tablet suddenly feeling like dead weight in her hands. Her usual sharp replies, her condescending confidence, gone. All that remained was the uncomfortable realization that her arrogance had not only humiliated a candidate, but also tarnished her own credibility. As Aaliyah stood quietly by, Madison tried to salvage dignity. "I only wanted what was best for the program." But Mr. Thompson shook his head gently. "The best for this program is people with vision, with empathy. People who lift others up, not tear them down." "You forgot that, Madison." Her shoulders sagged under the weight of his disappointment. By the end of the day, whispers spread through the company halls. Madison's reputation as the sharp, untouchable recruitment director was crumbling. What once made her admired, her arrogance masked as confidence, now made her the subject of quiet criticism. Her downfall wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, silent, and far more painful. The loss of respect, and in the very same room where she once mocked Aaliyah, she now stood diminished, a symbol of what happens when pride blinds compassion. Justice had been served. The days following the interview felt like a blur for Aaliyah. She went back to her small apartment, folding laundry for her siblings, cooking simple meals, and waiting for a phone call she wasn't sure would come. Then, one evening her phone rang. Aaliyah Johnson. The voice was calm, professional. "We're pleased to inform you that you've been selected as the newest member of our executive development program." She nearly dropped the phone. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much. It wasn't just a job. It was a doorway." When she walked into the company as an official member of the program, heads turned. Not because of her outfit, not because of prestige, but because she carried herself with the quiet strength of someone who had earned her place. Mr. Thompson personally welcomed her. "Remember, Aaliyah," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder, "leadership isn't about titles. It's about the lives you impact. Never lose that heart you showed on the platform that day." And she didn't. Instead of blending into the corporate mold, Aaliyah reshaped it. She pushed for mentorship programs that paired executives with candidates from underrepresented backgrounds. She advocated for community outreach initiatives, making sure the company gave back to the neighborhoods most often overlooked. She proved day by day that brilliance wasn't confined to certain schools or polished resumes. It lived in resilience, empathy, and perseverance. Her ideas didn't just get polite nods. They sparked real change. Soon her peers admired her not only for her work ethic but also for her vision. Even some of those who once doubted her began to see leadership differently. The story of her act of kindness, missing her train to help a stranger, began circulating quietly within the company. Employees repeated it over coffee, sharing it as a reminder that character mattered more than appearances. It became part of the company's culture, an unspoken lesson passed from one department to another, and the impact didn't stop there. One afternoon, while visiting a local community center, Aaliyah shared her journey with a group of young students. She told them about rejection letters, about long nights working 2 jobs, about missing her train to help someone in need. But that one choice, she said, looking into their wide eyes, changed my life. Kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong. Your story matters, and it can take you further than you ever dreamed. The students leaned in, some nodding, some fighting back tears. For them, Aaliyah wasn't just a professional in a blazer. She was proof that their struggles didn't disqualify them. They prepared them. Back at the company, change rippled quietly but surely. Madison, who once dismissed Aaliyah, now sat silently in meetings, forced to reflect on her actions. And though her pride made it difficult, even she couldn't deny the respect Aaliyah had earned. In a world that so often celebrated polished images and surface-level success, Aaliyah had turned the spotlight back on what truly mattered: perseverance, integrity, and the courage to choose kindness even when it cost something. She wasn't just a new hire. She was a new standard, and because of her, the company, and the people watching from the sidelines, would never see leadership the same way again. Life is full of crossroads. Sometimes the world tells us to move faster, to chase success at all costs, to focus only on ourselves. But the truth is, it's often the quiet, unseen moments of compassion that define who we really are, and open doors we never expected. Aaliyah Johnson thought missing her train meant missing her future. Instead, it was the very act of sacrifice, of putting someone else before herself, that became the key to unlocking her destiny. Her story reminds us that kindness is not weakness. In fact, it is the greatest strength we can carry into any room, any workplace, any community. Degrees and resumes matter, but character outlasts them all. Madison's arrogance crumbled because it was built on judgment. Aaliyah's triumph rose because it was built on empathy. And that is a lesson for all of us. When we choose to lift others, we rise higher ourselves. So the next time life puts you in a moment of choice, to rush ahead or to stop and help, remember Aaliyah. You never know how far one act of kindness can ripple. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to this channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of perseverance, compassion, and hope. Together, we can spread light in a world that often forgets how much it needs it.